Okay, by the way, if you were just watching the one before this video, I accidentally ended it. That's why it's shorter than the other ones. It isn't because I wanted to end it at that point. I hit the space bar on my computer and I didn't realize that would end it. So here we go. We're on mindfulness of other people as part of building better relationships. And so I talked about observing, the observe skill, where you're really able to observe the other person, observe yourself in relation to the other person, and so on, and really be there, be present. The next one would be to use the skill of describe. And this is really just to stay away from judgments and assumptions and assuming that you know what's going on. It's giving people the benefit of the doubt. It's describing things behaviorally rather than looking for people's intentions. Take people at face value, more or less, and just see where things go. Because so often we will end things in a relationship early because we're making an assumption that the other person doesn't want to have anything to do with us, or they have certain intentions or certain ideas, and we really can't observe those. We're just making assumptions, which really makes it subject to our own biases from our past. So the idea is to hang in there with people and avoid making assumptions, avoid making interpretations, and just sort of be there in the moment with people and see where it goes. And participate is the third mindfulness skill. And the idea here is that once you are in with somebody doing things, throw yourself into interactions with other people. I had lunch with somebody not long ago who has trouble really connecting in relationships. We talked about it later because her experience during the lunch was that she was, we were chatting with each other, but she experienced it as completely nothing happening. Whereas I felt like we were progressing along, talking about things, and that we were in it. But she wasn't in it. She wasn't mindful. She wasn't present. Something else was going on in her mind. I'm not sure what it was, but being mindful when you're with other people is really the opportunity to actually have a chance of making a connection. The next handout has to do with a little worksheet, a little practice thing of identifying mindfulness of other people and sort of asking you, did you understand the teaching points from the previous page that we just went over? So it's a nice thing to check things with. And the next handout, handout 13, is on ending relationships. And the first thing it does is differentiate between relationships that are difficult and relationships that are destructive. The destructive relationship being really has this quality of completely spoiling the relationship or spoiling aspects of yourself, like your safety, your physical body, your mental well-being, your integrity, your happiness, peace of mind. In other words, really breaking down things. And so how do you decide? Because other relationships are very difficult, but they aren't really destructive in that way. There are difficulties and there are conflicts, and it's hard to pursue goals and it's hard to enjoy life. But with those ones that are difficult, you might decide, let me really go at it and try to problem solve this. And a point made here in bold is to never make decisions about ending relationships when you're not in wise mind. If you're in emotion mind, you might end a relationship, which then you'll start again in 2 days when you're in a different emotion. So the idea is, how do you get to the bottom of the well, sort of be in emotion, in wise mind, and make a decision to end a relationship, regardless of what your mood's going to shift back and forth between. And there's just several teaching points on this page as you go down it, which are all explained in the manual. Very helpful things. Coping ahead to troubleshoot. So if you want to practice ending the relationship ahead of time, you can cope ahead and think of how you're going to do that so that it's not just a total shock, or don't get totally dysregulated when you do it. There's emphasis on using your dear man, give fast skills to build the relationship or to end the relationship. this is really about ending relationships, but being direct, using a describe. Here's the situation. Here's how it affects me, my feelings, my opinions. And then, therefore, I'm gonna ask you to join me in ending this relationship, or if not, just let you know that I need to end it. And get very direct if possible, but using Dear Man, Give Fast as a framework. Practicing opposite action for love. If you feel that you're loving the wrong person, that your love is driving you towards somebody, but that emotion gets you in trouble because it's not a person who's actually good for you, it's a destructive relationship. So you might practice that when you have feelings of love, you might notice the urge and then notice what the opposite would be, and then act on the opposite rather than on the urges for love. And then there is one of those kind of worksheets asking questions about, did you understand that? With identifying how to end relationships. It's sort of like quizzing you almost and having you think further about it. The final section in interpersonal effectiveness, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. It also is not something with starred handouts because it usually won't be taught, but it's a very valuable thing. And it's also taught a lot in treatment of adolescents and families. And that is handouts for walking the middle path, which really is to find balance in relationships between different possible extremes that you might go to in a relationship. And so it's like, how do you get to balance? And it really is the teaching of several things in DBT that sometimes aren't directly taught. Like, what does dialectics mean? How does balancing opposites, how when you're in opposite sides of the fence in a relationship, or you're in opposite sides of the fence in your own mind about a relationship, how do you find the middle path that is a synthesis of both sides, and therefore finding something that might have a better chance of being a lasting decision? Then there's teaching validation directly, which we've already taught under the Dear Man, Give Fast skills a little bit, but this is like really going back and talking about what it is that's valid in ourselves, valid in other people, and how do we validate those things? Why is that important? And there'll be practices with that. Then she has a section on recovering from invalidation. So this is really when we've been invalidated, how do we validate ourselves to recover from the invalidation that's come our way? Really important teaching, and related to compassion-focused therapy. And finally, it's going to be learning principles, strategies for changing behavior, changing other people's behavior, changing one's own behavior by understanding how reinforcement works and what things are reinforcers, and how do we use reinforcement to change behavior, and what about if we're trying to reduce behaviors? How do we use extinction? How do we use punishment? When and how do we use these different things? How do we put these together in an overall way to try to change things in relationships and to work things out? So very important, interesting stuff to teach. Sometimes you don't get to it in an ordinary skills group, but it's here to teach. And the manual's very good about it. There's teaching on validation, which is essentially the same teaching as one of the worksheets or handouts that we mentioned when we were talking about validation in the give skills. And then there's further ways to be learning these things. So I'm not going to talk more about them now. They're there, nice set of handouts, and then come all the worksheets at the end of this, which are keyed to the handouts. Mostly in this teaching I've been doing, I haven't been emphasizing the worksheets. It would have just taken too much time. But if you're watching this as a precursor to a DBT intensive that I'm teaching, these are things we can get into when we actually are together and you've already followed these introductions, okay, to skills, the DBT skills. So you may have started with any module here. So I don't know if this is the end of the 4 modules for you, but it is for me. This is the 4th one I've been putting on videotape. And so I've been looking forward to continuing to learn, teach, and do these things with you if I'm working more with you, or just I hope that they've been helpful for you as an introduction to the skills. Yeah, that's it for now. Signing off. Bye-bye.